Hi, this is my Module 12 assignment. It is the case study over copyright infringement. It takes place at St. Regis School, which is a small rural school, kindergarten through 8th grade. It has 2 classes per grade level and about 420 students. The personnel involved were the media specialist, Mrs. Lynn, 2 of the 3rd grade teachers, Mrs. Williams and Mrs. Brandon, the PTA president, Mrs. Evans, miscellaneous teachers who asked Mrs. Lynn for copies of computer programs, and the principal, Mr. Sample. When it happened, from reading the narrative, I would guess that it happened sometime in the middle of the school year, as it talked about months passing between the purchase of the software and the copying and distribution of the software. What happened, there was computer software that was purchased, and the software was then copied by the media specialist for distribution into the classrooms, and this copying was a possible copyright infringement based on how the software was used from the computer lab and transferred into the classrooms. As far as the narrative, it is a small rural kindergarten through 8th grade school, and there was a dispute over copyright infringement when the media specialist, Mrs. Lynn, made copies of several software programs that were purchased for the computer lab. The intent was for the grade level teachers to be able to utilize the programs in their classrooms. One 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. Brandon, was not comfortable with the copying and using the illegally copied programs. When she confronted the media specialist, she was met with a disgruntled response from the media specialist. So the 3rd grade teacher approached the principal and told him about the infraction and about her fears that there would be some repercussions on the school by using the programs without the consent of the authors. When the principal approached the media specialist the next day, she was actually kind of proud of the fact that she was able to save the school and the PTO some money. However, the principal did inform her that it was reckless for her to violate copyright laws to share the software. He told her that she needed to collect the copies that she had already distributed and stop using the illegal copies. Her response was that, the school was a small school, no one would ever find out. It was helping the students in the classroom, and it was saving the PTO and the school a large amount of money. And even mentioned that the PTO president helped her make and distribute the copies, and the PTO president was pleased about all the money that was also being saved. As far as the legality and ethics, based on copyright infringement laws, Mrs. Lynn did definitely violate copyright laws by making the copy of the software. Because the software licensing allows for a limited number of copies, her flash drive copies would be considered illegal, and any of the copies of copyrighted material shared in the classrooms were not done legally for the teachers to use. The use of the copyrighted materials without the consent from the author or owner, it does financial damage, and even though it's a small amount in this case, it does fall under the copyright laws that talk about damages done to the owner or creator of the content. In the original purchase agreement, I would guess that there was probably a statement about how many copies could be utilized and also for what purpose they could be used. If the limited purchase agreement was for only the copies in the computer lab, then obviously the classroom copies would not be able to be used. And during the situation, there was no discrimination or harassment. It did talk about the media specialist being somewhat angry with the 3rd grade teacher. However, I would not consider it discrimination or harassment. So what really happened, in summary, it's basically in an attempt to save the school money and assist the classroom teachers with instruction, the media specialist, Mrs. Lynn, made illegal copies of copyrighted materials, and in doing so, possibly put the school and the teachers in danger of an infringement lawsuit from the creators of the material. The people that were involved, obviously the principal, who is Mr. Sample. He's regarded as a well-known and liked member of the school. He's been with the district for 3 years. Mrs. Lynn, who was the media specialist and the computer lab teacher, she just wanted to save the school money and help the classroom teachers. Mrs. Williams was one third grade teacher. She was excited for the opportunity to use the software in the classroom and not just in the computer lab. Mrs. Brandon was the third grade teacher that was aware of copyright laws and possible infringement by Mrs. Lynn, brought it to the attention of the principal. The PTO president and different members of the PTO, they want to save money and yet successfully help the teachers be successful with the students. And then there were multiple classroom teachers that asked for copies to use in their classroom. Whether they knew it was illegal or not, that part was not necessarily known. Again, it happened at St. Regis Public School. It's kindergarten through 8th grade. It's a small school, only about 420 students. It is in a rural area. It said that it was about 25 miles away from a larger city. It is poorly funded by the state, and the PTO has to help out with 2 large fundraisers each year in order to purchase software and computers for the computer lab and the classrooms, and also help with teacher instructional technology. The software is funded by the PTO, and it is also used by classroom teachers in the computer lab when they are scheduled. The programs are kindergarten through 8th grade. Most of the classroom teachers utilize the computer lab and the software. There are a few that they said did not utilize the computer lab that often. But the PTO definitely funds most of the technology that is used and purchased. For possible damages in a situation where St. Regis is found to be in violation, the fines could be extremely damaging. In other copyright infringement cases, fines of millions of dollars were awarded to authors, owners, and creators of copyrighted materials. If St. Regis were to be fined for infringing on copyright laws, the results would definitely be disastrous for the school, the teachers, the PTO, and realistically the community as a whole. As far as the individuals that are at risk, any teacher and administrator at St. Regis would have a personal stake in the situation, and if they were to come under a lawsuit, all of them could be affected. The media specialist who's making the copies is definitely in harm's way, and even though she feels that it is minor, it can be dangerous to the other staff members as far as their careers go. And then finally, the PTO members are at risk as well, since the president has allowed and even assisted in the copying and distribution of these materials. The relevant stakeholders, just with the information given, it's evident that few stakeholders have actually been contacted. Other than Mr. Sample, Mrs. Brandon, and Mrs. Lynn, it appears that the other teachers are using some of the shared materials, but not necessarily knowing what the risks are of copyright laws, nor even if they are knowingly infringing on those laws. Others who definitely need to know include the superintendent of the school district and possibly the school's lawyers, the PTO president and members of the PTO, and then any of the teachers who may be using the materials. Whether I have all the information I need right now, I feel I can make a decision, and I do feel that the school is infringing on copyright laws. The one piece of information that I do not have is the purchase agreement that talks about how and where the copies can be utilized in the classroom. So that's definitely one thing that I would need to find out. But knowing what I know, I definitely know that I have I can make a decision, and if we need to adjust accordingly once we find out more information, I definitely can do that. Some of the options and consequences. If we do nothing, it would definitely be putting the school district at risk of a costly lawsuit, and also set a precedent that we're okay with breaking copyright laws. It would definitely lose some respect from the community members or even colleagues in other districts by showing that we're not willing to follow the laws as a school district and as an administrator. On the other hand, the staff and students would benefit from having the software more readily available in their classrooms and to be able to use it more often. If I were to give a harsh response, it would definitely lead to the removal of all the software copies, and they would all be destroyed immediately. It would also mean punishment for all of the involved with copying, distribution, and the use of the copyright software, written notices, suspensions, or even firings. And even with Mrs. Lynn's resistance to removing and destroying the software, I feel like this could be a somewhat drastic step that would definitely be a last resort to use as far as the information goes. For a middle of the ground option, I would definitely, again, gather all the copies and materials and destroy them if need be. If the purchase agreement allows for copies to be made or multiple classrooms to be utilized, then obviously the situation would be made a lot easier. But as it is, I feel like we would need to destroy the copies. Next, I would definitely give a written notice of reprimand to Mrs. Lynn, just regardless of whether she infringed on the copyright laws on purpose. Her resistance to destroying the material and her opposition to Mrs. Brandon's concerns and even Mr. Sample's inquiries just kind of show a lack of respect to her coworkers and to her immediate supervisor. You would definitely need to have a staff meeting to inform and educate the staff on the current policies dealing with copyright and usage of copyrighted materials. The meeting with the PTO would definitely be needed to talk to the president about the purchasing and the copying of copyrighted materials. And also you would need to discuss the budget for future purchases to possibly get it increased so that the need to copy materials would not be as great. The pros and cons of doing nothing. Obviously, if the school saves money on purchases, the PTO can fund different materials instead of buying more of the same. Students would definitely benefit from the ability to utilize the programs more often and in each of the classrooms. And you know what? Since it is a small district, maybe it would go unnoticed. However, the cons of doing nothing, there's definitely the chances of a lawsuit happening that could cost the school district millions of dollars in fines and penalties. Community members would definitely lose respect for the principal, the teachers, and the PTO for breaking the law and then letting it go and not stopping it from happening. And it would also set the precedent that it is okay to break copyright laws, and more teachers in the future may actually break those laws by making more copies. The pros and cons of a harsh response. The pros would, obviously, the illegal copies would be confiscated and destroyed, which would free up the school from a possible lawsuit. And it would send a message to all stakeholders that the copyright laws are important and they're going to be followed by the school district. The cons would definitely be the teachers would possibly lose their jobs. Students would lose out on the opportunity to use that software. And you may be seen as being too harsh, and you might not get people to want to come work for you. And teachers from outside the district may be afraid to come work in the district with the fear of being fired. The pros and cons of the middle ground response. Again, the pros would be that the illegal copies would be confiscated and destroyed, which would free up the school from a possible lawsuit. And it would also send that message that the same thing, that copyright laws are important and they would be followed. It would be a positive message to the students as well about the importance of those copyright laws. As far as cons, students would definitely lose out on the opportunity to use that software. Teachers would be angry that the software is taken out of the classroom. Mrs. Lynn and others who are written up may be angry about the reprimand and be less likely to help out with situations or even going above and beyond their duties in the future. And again, just the success of the student could be hindered if the software is removed. As far as my decision, I would definitely go with the middle of the road decision. I would collect all the illegal copies and destroy them if need be. I know it says immediately there, but again, in further investigation, I would definitely make sure that they cannot be used in the classroom before I would destroy them. I would write a letter of reprimand for Mrs. Lynn, explaining everything that happened. I would also ask her to attend training over copyright laws. If possible, I would even have the school cover the cost of her training, just as a show of good faith to let her know that we still believe in her and that we still want her to stay in the district. I would give a written notice to any of the teachers who were knowingly using the copyrighted materials and inform them that a letter of reprimand would be issued in the future if they repeated the offense. I would have a staff training over copyright laws and the differences between them and fair use laws, which allow you to use more materials in the classroom for free. And then obviously give them examples of what can and can't be used and when they can be used. I would make sure and evaluate all of the software being used in the school to ensure that it's being used legally and that no prior copies had been made before this situation. Definitely communicate to the superintendent everything that has occurred and discuss the actions that were being taken to alleviate the situation. And then finally, I would meet with the PTO president or the PTO to discuss the district policies and, as I mentioned before, the budgets moving forward to purchase more technology. To implement the decision, I would definitely immediately collect all the software and inform the teachers to stop using them at once. As I said, I would investigate the purchase agreements to determine eligibility for use on other machines. If it is illegal and they're not to be used, I would destroy all the copies and delete the program from non-authorized machines. I would then inform the superintendent of the situation and the actions being taken. I would discuss the infringement with all parties involved and issue warnings and reprimands for those parties. I would review and evaluate all the software being used in classrooms and laboratories to determine if they are being used legally or illegally. I would organize the staff training for district policy, copyright laws, and best practices. And then finally meet with the PTO president and possibly the PTO members to discuss plans for future technology. One of the things that I reflected on from making this decision is that there are definitely gray areas that need to be addressed. Unfortunately, however, one black and white area is that copyright laws were being infringed upon. Regardless of how we feel as educators or how much money we can save using those bootlegged materials, it's vital that we follow the laws and keep the integrity of the district intact. Mrs. Lynn, although meaning well, was definitely in the wrong to make the copies, and any teacher who was knowingly using the illegal copies is also at fault. By destroying those copies, we may have hindered the education of some of the students, but the elimination of possibly millions of dollars in fines definitely outweighs the cost of destroying those programs. In the end, the training the staff will receive, it definitely strengthened the integrity of the district, will allow for a positive outcome for the staff and for students. In evaluating the situation and all the given information, I determined the best plan of action was to stop the use of the software and communicate the importance of following district, state, and federal policies to the staff. Even if removing the software from the classrooms may hinder student success, it is what is best for the school and ultimately the students. And in providing the staff with the proper training about copyright laws, I would be communicating the importance of following these laws and would be reiterating the district's policies concerning these laws. And the need for reminders about such laws is necessary as the policies are updated and changed. Here are my references for this assignment, and I want to thank you for watching.